Hey, and welcome to All Things Podcasting, where we will be giving you an inside look at how to launch, grow, and manage a podcast. If you've been dreaming of starting a podcast but don't know where to start, or you have a podcast and you're looking for the best and most productive growth strategies, then this podcast is for you. Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining me. So today we're going to be talking all about how to get started with audio and video content. So we're going to dive right in. Don't want to waste your time. So we're going to start off with defining your podcast purpose. Before you can think about what software you need or what camera or what mic or anything like that, we've got to figure out what the purpose of your podcast is. Why are you doing it? What's the benefit for you going to be? How are you going to make it a moneymaker? How do you figure out what people want to hear from you? So let's start with that podcast purpose. When you're looking at your podcast, you need to figure out, am I doing this for a hobby? Am I doing this to drive sales to my business? What do I want these podcast listeners' next action to be? Do I want them to join my Facebook group? Do I want them to purchase a small program? Do I want them to join a mastermind? Do I want them to book as a one-on-one client? There's so many different options out there as far as what do you want the money-making action to be? But also, what do you want your audience to learn? What are you trying to teach them? What is the focus of this podcast going to be? You need to have a direction for your podcast when you first get started. And when I say podcast, I just want to make a note. When I say podcast, I'm talking about your piece of macro content. We do everything from a foundation of podcasts, but this is also referring to that video recording that's going to get turned into YouTube and we're going to repurpose it and all of those things. But for simplicity, I'm just going to call it your podcast. Okay, so that podcast purpose. What do we want people to know? What do we want them to learn? What do we want them to feel when they're done listening to the podcast? What kind of vibe do we want to convey? All of those things, super important to figure out before you pick a name for your podcast, before you figure out branding, before you create your cover art, before you write your description, any of those things. What is the purpose of your podcast? So I challenge you guys right now, do some brainstorming, make a note on your phone, get a Post-it note out, and write down some of those purposes for your podcast. How are you going to make money? Like I said, your podcast purpose and how you're going to make money from your podcast need to tie together. If your plan is to make money by driving people to your one-on-one breathwork sessions, right? Totally cool. But then you would expect the podcast to be about breathwork or mindset or something related, right? If your podcast is about, I don't know, how to maintain an aquarium and you want people to invest in your breathwork classes, that's not a direct correlation. We need a link that goes directly from the content we're putting out to the offer that we want people to invest with us on. So there needs to be a direct pathway from those listeners so that they can go from listener into your other audiences, your email list, your Facebook group, whatever that is, and then convert into a buyer. It has to be a direct. So how do you kind of figure out what words you need to be using, what your title should be, what words you should use in your podcast description, what words you should use in your YouTube titles, all of those things. This is where market research and keyword research become a really, really important piece. So we want to talk to our audience that we have existing, people who have worked with us, past clients, past students, whatever that looks like, and ask them, if you were going to Google to search for somebody who does what I do, what would you type in that search bar? If you were looking for a podcast covering the content that I cover, what would you search from the search bar? You need to get that feedback from them because the words that we use aren't always the words that our audience are going to use to try to find someone like us. It's kind of like legal jargon. We know all the terms, we know all the industry stuff, but our audience isn't there yet. They don't know those terms. So we need to make sure that we are using words that they are going to be using when they search. So that's where that market research comes into play. Figure out how your audience defines you, figure out what words they're using to look for you online so that you can use those words in your marketing. Okay, keyword research. This is where the SEO comes into play. So I kind of do this the easiest way possible, super low budget, super low tech. Go to Google, go to YouTube, go to Spotify, go to wherever. Find a search bar on the internet and it'll give you predictive text. So if we start typing in podcast It's going to give us all these predictive texts. How to start a podcast, how to start a podcast on a low budget, how to repurpose your podcast content. It's going to give us all these predictive text things that we can then use as like, oh, duh, people are asking these questions. That's why those things are popping up, because a lot of people have asked those questions and made those searches before. So we need to kind of steal that information and use it so that we know here's the things I need to be talking about. And I need to use these keywords in my titles for my podcast, for my YouTube, for my blog post, all of those things. Make sure those keywords are everywhere. So that kind of covers like laying the groundwork as far as what do we need to be talking about? How do we need to be setting things up? And this needs to carry over into all of your content. This needs to carry over into the episodes that you're posting, not just those initial like launch pieces. You need to continue to do this research, continue to figure out what people are asking for, what information they need. Okay, now we're going to move on to equipment. And equipment is the most boring thing ever to talk about, but it is one of the most frequently asked questions. So here we are talking about it. Okay, so for your mic, and I'm not following this rule right now, I do not have my mic set up. But the most important thing is to not use your laptop mic. Don't use your laptop mic. Don't use the mic on your phone. If you like cannot get a mic, I think mine was only like $30 on Amazon. I'm getting ready to upgrade. But if you like just don't have access, whatever, using AirPods or like the Apple headphones that have the little mic on it is 1,000 times better than using your laptop mic. The mic of all mics, in my opinion, the one that I have on my Amazon list currently that I'm waiting for some nice person to buy for me, is the Audio Technica ATR 2100X. Okay, that is like the best mic. That's not a ridiculous amount of money. It's like $90. I should probably just go buy it, but I haven't done that yet. So Audio Technica is the way I would go for mics. For cameras, also not following this rule right now, but getting any kind of webcam is going to be really good. I have clients who record on their iPhones. The camera on your iPhone is way better than your built-in camera on your laptop usually, unless you have a really good camera on your laptop. But like Logitech makes a ton of good cameras. Again, like $30 on Amazon, not a big deal. But when you hook these things up to your computer, you need to make sure that you go into settings and make sure that they are selected as the source for video and audio so that you're getting the good quality. Okay, so for recording, there's all kinds of different ways to record for doing like guest episodes and just doing solos, all different kinds of ways. All of the like online programs, I can't think of any of their names right now, but like the ones that like you get online, log in, and it like sets up your meeting for you. I don't personally recommend those. I like to stick to tried and true Zoom meetings. Even if you're doing a solo episode, do a Zoom meeting with yourself, record the audio and video, and use that. Make sure it's set to record to your local computer. If it is set up to record to the cloud, it's relying on Wi-Fi signal, which is why a lot of those, like Riverside FM, came to my brain. That's why a lot of those don't work. And I know some of them are like testing, allowing you to record to your local computer, and then the guest also record to their local computer. And then you can like, it'll put those together. But when it's relying on Wi Fi, it's relying on your Wi Fi and it's relying on the person you're talking to's Wi Fi. So if that Wi Fi glitches out, half the time it drops the call and you end up with like 15 different recordings. I had somebody reach out to me like 6 months ago that was like, I recorded this guest episode. It was really good, but it sent me like 15 different files because the internet kept dropping and it kept resetting the whole meeting. So I would just stick to Zoom. If one of these programs becomes more reliable, I will let you all know. But for now, stick to Zoom. It's easy. Everybody knows how to use it. Most people have logged on there before. It's easy to send invites, all of that stuff. So I would just stick with Zoom. Make sure it's recorded to your local computer, get that file, grab the download, and you're good to go. Okay, for editing software, there's a ton of different things out there. When we first started, we were using Audacity. And Audacity is one of those programs that gives you the sound waves and you're just editing the audio content, right? But currently, we're using a program called Script. It's DESCRIPT. And it is the program of all programs. I'm so excited about it. There are some other programs that are starting to come onto the market that are doing some of the same things, but none of them have kind of reached the level that Descript has yet. So, Descript allows you to upload that video file that you recorded on Zoom. It is going to pull up the video, it's going to pull up the audio, and it's also going to automatically transcribe your episode. So, you have the audio, the video, and the transcription all right there for you inside Descript. You're then able to go in to the transcript like a Google Doc and just cut things out. So, if you mess something up or you flubbed on a word or whatever, you can just delete it from the transcript and it automatically deletes it from the audio and the video content. Okay, so that's like when we first started using Descript, that was like the limits of it, right? Well, they have expanded and expanded and expanded and added all the cool new bells and whistles. So now you're able to do really cool, like video editing stuff. We're able to add in transition screens and images to the video and all kinds of cool, fancy YouTube stuff. Okay. So that's a really cool new feature that they've added. They've also added in, instead of having to use like Alphonic, which is a program that normalizes sound levels, you're able to do that through Studio Sound directly into Script. So you don't have to download the file and then upload it to Alphonic and then download it again. And that would only do it on the audio, I'm pretty sure, unless Alphonic changed something. But it does it across the audio and the video, normalizes the sound. So that saves you a lot of time on editing as well. You can add in your intro and outro there. So you have everything all set up for you in Descript. And then you just got to download those files. You can use the transcript and copy it, turn it into blog posts, emails, social captions, all of the things. It's miraculous. So then you're able to take Descript and use it to create social assets. So you're able to automatically write in Descript, highlight a section and say, I want to turn this into an audiogram, or I want to grab this video clip. And you can import your template directly from Canva and boom, you're done. It exports it as a file to your computer and you can post it to social. So it like just saves a lot of steps by having it all in one place because you're not having to download and re-upload and all of that nonsense. So that is definitely what I recommend for editing software. Okay, so for formatting your podcast, there's a lot of different podcast options, right? I'm sure you've listened to podcasts that are all guest, podcasts that are no guest, and podcasts that are an hour long or 2 or 3 hours long, podcasts that are 5, 10, 15 minutes long. It's all over the board. There's so many different options. Here are general rules of thumb. So for guests, if you want to have guests, which I think is a viable option to like help grow your audience, help bring in some variety and not always make it like so dependent on you bringing the content, do not do more than 50% guest. So like if you're releasing 4 episodes a month, do like every other week. Because when you have your podcast, the key goal is to be promoting yourself, not to be promoting other people. When your podcast becomes all guest episodes, it ends up where you are promoting all of your guests, which is great, which is fine. However, you are then not promoting yourself and your programs as much as what you should be. So I would do like 1 or 2 podcast episodes a month or YouTube episodes that are guest episodes. For the length of your episode, I would do somewhere between 10 and 30 minutes. Once you go past that 30-minute mark, especially on YouTube, listenership drops off. And we teach adding like a episode specific call to action at the end of the episodes. So we really want to make sure that we keep our people enticed that whole time and that they don't fall off at the end of the episode. Also, you can fit a ton of information in 30 minutes. I've only been on here 15 minutes and I've like given you all the deets on launching a podcast. So you can get a lot of information in there. Just make sure that you are focused on one key core content area. Give them one easy to digest piece of content and then focus on that for the whole episode. That makes it easier for them to listen to, easier for them to follow. They have a clear action path afterward, and it just makes the content easier to find, all of the things. It's just better. Focus on one thing per episode. When it comes to conversions, we have to give our podcast listeners a next step. We can't give them all this amazing content on podcasts and on YouTube and on Reels and on our posts and all of these things without a next step. That next step can be anything. It can be to download a freebie. It could be to get a product. It could be to join your Facebook group. It could be to send you a message. All of those are good options, but we need to give them something to do and something specific. So if you want them to join your Facebook group, tell them why. Say, we're going to be going into this process more deeply in our Facebook group. Come join us. Or say, send me a message with how you feel about this and we can talk about it, or whatever. You need to give them something specific to come to you for. This is going to lead them into your funnel, which is then going to help you convert them more easily. Through this content, that audio and video macro content, we're building relationship. We're building know, like, and trust. But that's not enough. We have to send these people further into our funnel. We have to send them to an email list. We have to send them to speak to us directly in some way so that we're able to convert them. The worst part about podcasts specifically is there are reviews, but there aren't comments. There isn't a way to know who is listening. So it's a great way, like no pressure way to build that know, like, and trust, but it is hard to track who your listeners are. So we want to give them a way to come into our circle in a more obvious way. Okay, so that's kind of like the down and dirty quick glance. If you are thinking of launching a podcast and a YouTube channel, if you are thinking about getting into audio and video content, here's what you should do. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of All Things Podcasting. If you enjoyed this episode, then hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcasting platform so that you'll never miss an episode. This podcast is for you, so be sure to reach out and let me know what you thought about it. You can DM me through Facebook or Instagram, where I also share valuable content, or you can find me in our Facebook group. Just search for All Things Podcasting in the search bar. I can't wait for you to join us next week for the latest episode of All Things Podcasting.